Weekly Review. Topics that affect our communities. In-depth analyses and opinions. All that you need is in one place. Weekly Review. Sunday night at 9 on ViuTVSix.
Europe's top teams in action. International Champions Cup 2017. Bayern Munich versus Milan. Saturday afternoon at 5:30 on Channel 96 ViuTV6. Juventus versus Barcelona. Sunday morning at 6 on Channel 99 ViuTV. Chelsea versus Bayern Munich. Next Tuesday night at 7:30 on Channel 96 ViuTV6. International Champions Cup 2017. Live on ViuTV and ViuTV6.
Good evening, I'm Britt Clennett in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Private hospital lends hand to help alleviate bed shortages in public wards. The hospital authority hopes more will support. And basic law under threat. Civic Party lawmaker Alan Leung warns against co-location arrangement for the cross-border express rail link. And South Korea urges the North to respond to proposals for military peace talks seemingly ignored by Pyongyang. And a solution to overcrowding in local hospitals could be on the cards. The hospital authority is working with a private hospital to alleviate the situation caused by a surge cases of flu. Starting next Wednesday, St Teresa's Hospital agreed to provide 48 beds to the authority at a discounted cost. The Queen Elizabeth will be sending some of its patients there. They'll pay just $120 for hospital expenses. The authority has reserved $20 million to cover any additional costs. Officials also hope to come up with a similar arrangement with more private hospitals. Bed occupancy for internal medicine wards is already at full capacity. Officials believe funding for hospital expansions will prevent the type of overcrowding that's occurred these past few weeks from happening further down the line.
If we can have more space, more beds and more manpower with the gradual improvement in manpower through the recruiting additional graduates from doctors and nurses, then our situation will be better and better. Although the so-called demand still exceeds our capacity, will linger on for a few years.
Meanwhile, a HKU microbiology professor says a flu mutation is probably what's behind the surge in cases this year. In an interview with local media, he said research showed vaccines lose effect when viruses change. He added that more Tamiflu pills should have been distributed to elderly homes. And the Centre for Health Protection is looking into how a man being treated at Grantham Hospital in Aberdeen contracted Japanese encephalitis during his stay. The disease causes brain inflammation and can, in some cases, result in brain damage. Hygiene officials were seen killing off mosquitoes around the area today, but hospital authorities don't know whether the man contracted the disease via a blood transfusion or if he was bitten by an infected mosquito. The 52-year-old was undergoing a lung transplant. He was later diagnosed with the infection after falling unconscious and remains in critical condition. It's the third case reported in Hong Kong this year. And Civic Party Chairman Alan Leung has warned that a joint immigration system for the cross-border high-speed rail link will remove protection guaranteed for Hong Kongers under the Basic Law. Local media reports say under the proposals, mainland authorities would control immigration procedures at the West Kowloon terminus. That would mean allowing them to enforce national laws there. But Leung pointed out that Article 18 of the Basic Law prohibits just that, except in circumstances involving national matters. The arrangements are expected to be announced next week after Chief Executive Carrie Lam has discussed the proposal with her executive councillors.
I do not envisage that she has an easy task to persuade Hong Kong people about foregoing the protection afforded to us by the Basic Law, that we need not fear that mainland laws will in any way be practiced within the borders of Hong Kong as they are.
Well, police left people baffled after carrying out another anti-terror drill in Hong Kong, despite there being no indication the city is under any serious threat. The exercise took place in the early hours of today across several MTR stations where officers rehearsed taking down an armed lone wolf attacker with explosives. Various units, included the Counter-Terrorism Response Unit and the Police Dog Unit, took part. Police said the drill is aimed at ramping up the different units' coordination capacity, but reiterated that Hong Kong's terrorism threat level remains moderate. Well, a massive explosion in Hangzhou City in eastern China killed 2 people and injured at least 55. The blast occurred around 8:40 this morning at a restaurant, sending debris across a major road and shattering windows of vehicles nearby. Local media said 12 of the 55 injured were in critical condition. More than 20 passengers on a bus in range of the explosion were among the injured. Police believe it was caused by a problem with a gas canister. And tensions over North Korea remain on edge after the South urged its neighbour to respond to proposals for military peace talks that have seemingly been ignored. Seoul is seeking to ease regional worries about Pyongyang's expanding missile and nuclear program, which have been coupled with increasingly belligerent diplomacy. South Korean leader Moon Jae-in, however, also has his own worries after pitting his reputation on pledges to engage with Pyongyang. For more on this, our Seoul correspondent Joseph Kim sent us this update.
It's been almost 1 week since South Korea made the official proposal for talks with North Korea through the media. And in that time, North Korea has remained silent. South Korea's defense ministry Friday urged North Korea to come to the table for dialogue to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula.
North Korea hasn't replied until now, so it's hard to open a dialogue today. It's an urgently needed task for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula to restore dialogue in the military area and to ease military tensions between the South and the North.
Seoul's proposal for talks is a continuation of South Korean President Moon Jae-in's new approach to Pyongyang, pursuing both sanctions and dialogue in order to achieve peace, as well as curb North Korea's growing weapons program. Still, Pyongyang has been critical of this, calling it both illogical and two-faced through its state media. Still, North Korea has not flatly declined or rejected the proposal for talks, and South Korea's defense ministry said that North Korea has until July 27th, which marks the anniversary of the signing of the armistice agreement that ended the Korean War, to respond to the proposal for talks.
Well, staying on North Korea, despite decades of international sanctions aimed at curbing the country's nuclear capabilities, its economy fared better in 2016 than it has done in 17 years. But as Ryan Brooks reports, the isolated state's GDP still makes up less than 5% of its neighbours in the south.
A resilient showing for North Korea's economy despite waves of international sanctions. Data released by the South Korean Central Bank on Friday says GDP hit a 17-year high last year. Growth figures for the North are estimated because Pyongyang doesn't post official data, leaving South Korean intelligence to gather information and come up with a number, which has come in at nearly 4%. Manufacturing, mining, and energy appear to have led expansion in 2016, fueling an economy that seems to be surviving in the face of punishing trade restrictions aimed at cutting off Kim Jong-un's nuclear weapons program. The data also shows that shutting down the Kaesong Joint Industrial Complex at the border with South Korea last year did little economic damage to the North, even though it was an attempt to hurt Pyongyang after it launched a long-range rocket. North Korea may be on a positive growth track, but its GDP for 2016 only adds up to 2% of what South Korea recorded in the same period. It's also unclear how China's ban on coal imports from Pyongyang will affect the North's economy moving forward. A UN report on Thursday said the North is also facing severe famine due to one of its worst droughts in decades.
Well, coming up next, the latest from the world of business with Joel Flynn.
Yes, thanks, Britt. We will kick off today by taking a look at what's been happening on the markets. And as we end the week, we also end the remarkable bull run of 9 days in a row of gains for the Hang Seng Index of leading shares. Today, we closed the session down 0.13% at 26,706 points. Profit-taking likely one of the main sources of sapping energy from the bulls, but we did see a bit of up and down as traders weren't sure which way to turn. A particularly good day, though, for power assets and its shareholders. The stock up more than 10% at the close. That was after the company said last night it was offering shareholders dividends of $8.27 per share. Nice little earner, that one. Now, at least 9 acquisitions of US companies by foreign buyers have been denied this year, a sign that the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US, or the CFR-US, is becoming more risk-averse under President Trump. One of the bigger questions it also raises, though, is about what that could mean for China's overseas buying spree. Dan Epstein is in Beijing with more.
Well, this is definitely a spanner in the works for Chinese companies. And keep in mind, there were 87 announcements of acquisitions by Chinese companies in the US this year, a record number, and up from 77 last year. But from America's perspective, this isn't just a matter of business. The CFI-US has to assess the potential security risk posed by foreign ownership when it comes to these companies, in particular technology companies. They have to ask what sort of information, what sort of technology is involved here. But unfortunately for China, this is particularly the sector that they're hoping to get their hands on. They want to leverage America's expertise and experience in the technology sector as they try to become more innovative. Now, there really has been a bad spell in general between China and the US when it comes to trade. You only need to look a few days ago at the CED, where there was virtually no outcome. And the perspective we got from the US coming out of it was that, well, China is not going to really help us to try and address the trade deficit in any concrete terms. So what we're hearing really is that, well, they're not going to make it for easy for China either. And making tougher restrictions for foreign ownership could be one really instantiation of this approach.
Dan Epstein there. Now, sources say US payment card companies are preparing to submit license requests to operate in China. The move comes after China agreed in May to give full and prompt access to the market, but with no clear roadmap from Chinese authorities for them to operate, there could still be a long wait before they pass any review. Roselle Chen has more.
U.S. card companies American Express, MasterCard, and Visa are preparing to submit license requests to operate in China. The move comes against the backdrop of growing economic friction between China and the United States. On Wednesday, the two countries failed to agree on ways to reduce the U.S. trade deficit with China. Savio Chan, CEO of U.S.-China Partners.
When the U.S. and China, negotiate all these trade imbalances, thing, there'll be a lot of give and take. But I think that, the card companies, Visa, MasterCard, and American Express, they know this is a long game. And China is a long-term strategy play.